Here's the truth. I go out, I have 4 dogs, and I get stopped every 20 metres. I'm the most popular man on the Glen Road where I live. But if I go out without the dogs, nobody speaks to me. I've realised nobody really likes me. They like my dogs.
Well, there's the basis for your next thought for the day.
It is a great...
Nobody likes me.
No, it's not true. The thing is, they're a great conversation starter, and beyond that as well, how could you walk past George?
I know. He's so gorgeous, and I get to live with him.
Listen, thank you so much for bringing him in. We really do appreciate it, and thanks to everybody in security for making that happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Jim. It is 7:28. Let's talk about the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. She's been discussing her plans for the future of her party, her loss of faith in God, and what she really meant when she said working at McDonald's made her working class. It's all part of a wide-ranging interview that she's conducted with Amal Rajan to mark 6 months as leader of the Conservative Party.
I got sick of, being given lines to read on the news that just sounded like a robot. And I thought, no, I'm not going to speak like that. I'm going to speak like a normal human being. And that's helped. That's actually helped me. But the other thing is that I don't like a fight, but I won't run away from a fight. If I'm fighting for someone, I'm fighting for people probably who can't fight for themselves. I'm fighting for a principle or an idea.
Do you want to be liked?
Sorry?
Do you want to be liked?
I want to be respected more than liked. I think politicians who try to be liked end up doing things that they shouldn't do. If you want to be liked, go and work for a charity or in a library. Politics is about taking difficult decisions. That's why we're elected. Otherwise, you could leave everything to civil servants.
She also discusses her faith. She says she's still a cultural Christian, but she stopped believing in God some years ago in the wake of the horrific Joseph Fritzl story, an Austrian man who imprisoned and abused his daughter over many years.
Whenever I was having a tough time, I did find strength in faith that I'm having a tough time, but I'm going to get through it because God does not test you beyond what you can bear. And I thought to myself, no human being should have had to experience what this woman believed. And maybe because I was very close to my father. So the idea of a father doing that to his own daughter, for me, was a level of disgust and abhorrence that I'd never experienced.
Well, let's talk about that interview, which is available now if you want to watch it on the BBC iPlayer. Claire Persol is a former Conservative Party special advisor, and Andrew Eborn is a Conservative commentator and broadcaster. Claire, nice to have you on the programme again. You listen to Kemi Badenoch, and this seems like an interview in which she's trying to set out her leadership, in which she's doing her very best to kind of almost reset. Is that an indication that things aren't going that well as Tory leader?
Hi, good morning. I think it's incredibly difficult when you're leader of the opposition because you are almost irrelevant. You have fallen from grace as a party. We had quite a bruising election last year in 2024. So I think it is a little bit of a reset. And I don't think that's a weakness in a leader. I think it's actually quite sensible to do so. But the problem that we have is Kemi is not able to put across what it is she believes in, what it is she wants the party to believe in, and how she's going to get that through and working. And I think that is the large problem. It's quite interesting to hear her talk about faith. That's one thing I've never heard before. But I think she needs to do these things very, very quickly because we are a year and a bit on now from that election and we're still no wiser as to what she stands for.
And Andrew, when you listen to that, I mean, Claire's suggesting that in some ways she kind of almost feels irrelevant. Do you think that's fair? Is that where we stand at the moment?
Well, I think it's actually very refreshing to hear, Kemi. And firstly, it's a delight to join you live from New York, where it's ridiculously early in the morning, but a joy nevertheless. And I loved hearing about George earlier as well. The reality is that trust in politicians is at an all-time low. And I always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. And the reality is that her interview, Kemi's interview, showed a very human side. It was a wonderful juxtaposition between her and Starmer, for example. She says she doesn't want to sound like a robot. Well, she doesn't sound like a robot. She's being very honest that being a politician, you need to have a very thick skin. She wants to be respected more than she wants to be liked, unlike poor old Jim and his puddles. And politics is about those sort of tough decisions. And what she's emphasised is this thoughtful conservatism, where she wants to be focused on principles over knee-jerk policies. And that's what she says. I do the thinking, and what people are going to get with new leadership under me is thoughtful not knee-jerk analysis. And what they're doing, they're trying to change the underlying mindset of the British state. It is, however, not being reflected in the polls at the moment. And if you look at those latest figures, Reform are storming ahead at between 27 to 33%, depending on which polls you believe. Labour at 21 to 22. And the Conservatives are down there at 17 to 18%. She needs to do something. I do think they need that stability. But I like the idea of telling the truth and showing the human side, which will appeal to a lot of people. And as Claire said, it's refreshing to hear her talking about faith and her own doubts in that as a result of the horrendous case when she was putting up prayers for having nice hair and good results and so on and so forth. But the horrendous circumstances, that appalling case, and the daughter who was praying and making her own prayers and not getting the results.
You know, it is interesting, though, listening to you talk about her wanting to be respected, not liked. I mean, because there's also an interesting story, which is on the BBC News website. It's from this interview, which you can watch on the BBC iPlayer, in which she talks about how she accused a fellow pupil of cheating. And that led to him being expelled from school. And she says, I was a relatively popular kid at school, and people said, why did you do that? Why would you do that? I said, because he was doing the wrong thing. The thing is, it might be the right thing, but actually popularity is what the polls are. And
yes.
is there a danger that actually that desire for respect goes beyond that point of connecting with the general public?
Well, it's a brilliant point. You're absolutely right. To be a politician, firstly, you had to have a very thick skin. I had Roger Stone on my show, the Andrew Eborn show, available on more platforms than Paddington, and he reminded me that basically politics is show business for ugly people. But it is a popularity question. You need to sort of turn around and say, make the people popular. But you could be popular because you are respected and have views that people might find difficult to accept. But you do have to sort of turn around and say, actually, we need to do the right thing. The question for the particular example about whether she exposed a particular person and how serious that was is probably relatively minor. But she's making history as the first black woman to lead a major UK party. But her focus isn't identity politics, it's about delivering for Britain. And that's what she keeps on trying to say is, look, I'd much rather be respected. Respect me for the views. I will make those tough decisions, because tough decisions do need to be made.
Just finally, Claire, though, I mean, this is about appealing to the general public, but there's also that question of appealing to those inside her party. And there still are these rumours that there are some MPs who are not particularly happy with how they're being led at the moment.
I think there's always going to be disquiet in the Conservative Party. We've been through a pretty rocky 5 years, and we've dispatched leaders with a level of dispassion I've not seen for a long time. The party needs to learn how to behave once more. It's been in power for a long time. It is an incredibly good party when it comes together. But as we've seen in the past, when it fails badly, and it takes some time to get put back together again. Does she have the personality to do that? Well, I think that remains to be seen. We have to give, I think, people a good couple of years before we start to look at their failings a bit more seriously. But I don't think there is anybody in particular who would want to take over at the moment. There are a lot of people out there who look like they want to be leader, who are putting together bright, shiny videos. But the reality is, it is an incredibly tough job. You have to be all things to all people, which you can't be, and you have to have a personality that pleases everybody. Nobody has that. Absolutely nobody. So I think that it is a tough job. I like to see a little bit more of a human side of a politician come out. It is incredibly easy just to dismiss somebody because you don't like what they're saying. But she sounds a bit more authentic in this interview than I think I've heard previously, which is a good thing.
Okay.
But the Conservative Party just needs to grow up.
Listen, I really appreciate you getting up early for us, Claire, and I appreciate you staying up late for us as well, Andrew. It's Claire Purcell and Andrew Eborn.
Yeah, the big question, do you vote for people you like, do you vote for people you respect, or do you vote for someone because you dislike the other person more? There's the thoughts for the day this morning.
Early breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio with Elavon. Make the move to Elavon today. Visit elavon.co.uk.
The cricket photos are just quite extraordinary. The Telegraph puts it as pain in vain for England's one-armed warrior. England lost that sort of very nail-biting final test match against India yesterday, despite the efforts of Chris Woakes, who came out to bat with one arm in a sling. We'll have the sports news for you just before the news at past. But the Telegraph's main story here is parents at Britain's top private schools defied Labour's VAT raid by paying fees in advance. So the most expensive private schools obviously said to parents that you can pay up front and save the money, and many parents took them up on that offer. The Times says the Prime Minister and the police are at odds over migrant suspects. The Guardian say the police warn of mass arrests at this Palestine Action protest. The controversy over the ban on Palestine Action has deepened, says The Guardian, as police warned of mass detentions if a demonstration that could attract more than 1,000 people carrying placards expressing support for the group went ahead this weekend. There's also a brilliant photograph of a lady battling a pink umbrella on the front page of The Guardian. Gusts of up to 100 miles per hour blew through Scotland, particularly Glasgow yesterday. We'll be live in Glasgow in about half an hour's time. Right now, though, to go through the papers in more detail, Andrew Eborn, the barrister broadcast president of Octopus TV. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. A pleasure to join you live from New York.
Well, how exciting. We've got lots of stories in the papers about immigration today. And this is really interesting. The headline in the Times from Matt Dathan says, Labour must stop 8 in 10 migrant crossings to break the smuggling model. As that one in, one out deal starts, senior officials think most small boat journeys would need to be prevented to ruin the business model. Effectively, you can't sort of send a couple back. 8 in 10 crossings need to be stopped. How practical do you think that is?
Well, it's not practical at all, is it? I mean, the reality, when you look at it, they're saying they can deport about 50 migrants per week, which equates to 1 in 17, 1 in 17 of all arrivals. So it clearly is a sort of non-starter before we even get going. It's always the hot topic, isn't it, about sort of how many people are coming in on the boats and what we're actually doing about it. It causes all sorts of resentment. They've been talking about smashing these vile gangs, which are people who are exploiting these people. But so far this year, 25,436 migrants have crossed the channel, which is apparently about 49% higher than the 17,031 that arrived by this time last year. It's a major, major problem. We're going to get the better the weather, although I know we've had storms and rains and terrible things like that, but the better the weather it is, the more we're going to see people crossing.
Yeah, and interestingly, I wonder how much public sentiment is shifting, because there's new YouGov polling, also inside the Times, that says nearly half of Britons would support mass deportations of recently arrived migrants.
Yes, no, that's absolutely right. And the thing is, however, when it gets tougher at home, then people look at, well, hang on, they're all coming over here, taking our jobs and using our resources and so on and so forth. All sorts of things are under pressure at the moment, including the NHS. Trying to get a dental appointment in certain areas is virtually impossible. And when you have images of people being put up in 4-star hotels, it naturally causes resentment. So it's not surprising that you have these sort of statistics turning around and saying, well, this is what the general public think.
I wonder if you're nervous about how the political conversation is going about this. The Mirror front page say Nigel Farage is labelled a fake patriot seeking to exploit division. Their headline here is Fanning the Flames.
Yes, I think the reality is this: we've got to have a sensible discussion about it without people being labelled far right or racist or whatever it is. Being concerned about immigration is neither of those things. And I think we have to have less heat and more light needs to be shone on it. And that's the reality. It is a concern seeing about certainly the illegal immigrants coming over. The 1 in, 1 out rule, which is explained so brilliantly earlier in the programme, it's not going to work if you're only getting 1 in 17. And it is a concern. But as I say, the more calls there are on our general resources, on the NHS, on the schools, on housing, the more there's going to be this resentment.
Yeah. Let's move on. Front page of the Times says people should be supported for up to a year after stopping weight loss medications to prevent them from really undoing all the good work they've done. This is NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, said patients should be given structured advice and follow-up support after you stop taking Mounjaro or Wegovy. I mean, that's an awful lot of time just to make sure you don't undo the work once you've come off the drugs.
No, you're absolutely right, Rosie. And I've made this point before whenever we discuss Mounjaro or Wegovy and others are available. All it is trying to make sure there are long-term behavioural habits are changed. What these drugs do is turn around and restrict your appetite. When you come off them, obviously the appetite's going to return. And so if your lifestyle just goes back to the normal stuff, you've got to put the weight back on. So it's right. We need to basically turn around and support people for however long it takes. And it's not going to be up to a year. The question is, as you rightly ask, is how how much is it going to cost and who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, we've got 1.5 million people taking weight loss jabs in Britain. Most of those people are paying for them privately right now. And it's an estimated 240,000 people with the greatest need will be on Mounjaro on the NHS over the next 3 years. When you're on it, clearly what needs to happen is a real restructuring of the relationship you have with food so that you are not reliant on the medication for a long time.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And any diet, you've got to work on that basis. It's a change of lifestyle. And it's sort of whatever you eat, it's in and out, isn't it? You're combining it with healthy lifestyle, making sure you exercise, eating appropriately. It's much better that we educate people about having a sensible relationship with food rather than just being reliant on a drug to solve that problem. Where those need an extra assistance, then those relevant drugs can help provide that. But as everybody points out, as soon as you come off them, the appetite's going to return, and you've got to make sure you've changed those lifestyle habits.
There is a headline that seems so obvious inside the Times today saying home-cooked meals can help you lose twice as much weight as ultra-processed food. I think we know that, don't we? I mean,
well, of course we should do, yes.
Yeah, so there we go. Well, some advice to you. I mean, I grew up in a household, I have to say, where my mum taught us from a very young age how to sort of cook dinner ourselves. And I think probably that was also a bit of outsourcing from her because I was one of four. But I was surprised when I went to university, the number of people who were sort of struggling with even beans on toast. You thought, all right, what's been going on here? Talking about appetite, I, with some sort of queasiness, bring this story up. There is a Danish zoo that's been asking pet owners, this is in The Guardian and lots of the papers have written it up, to donate rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, even horses. They're saying to the general public, like, if you've got a pet that is healthy but not wanted, give it to us, donate it to us, and we'll use it to feed our other animals.
It's a horror story, isn't it? And anybody cuddling up to their pets now to think that they might donate it to be eaten by one of these predators, it is absolutely horrendous. But that's exactly what they're saying. That they're appealing for donations for healthy small pets to be gently euthanized, is what they said, and fed to the predators. And they're talking about rabbits and chickens and guinea pigs. And they're also actually talking about horses as well, saying that nothing goes to waste. And these will be gratefully received basically on that sort of principle. What they need to try and do, they say, is to imitate the animal's natural food chain for the sake of both animal welfare and professional integrity. But it is one of the sort of horror stories, and on that sort of basis, anybody's got a pet, they'd be pretty concerned to hear this.
It's sort of makes you think, though, a little bit. Well, the zoo are obviously feeding animals to other animals all the time anyway, aren't they?
Yes. Well, that's what happened. Anybody who's got a snake will know that you have to make regular trips down to the pet shop to get your mice and so on and so forth. And it's the same with a number of pets that people have. But it is a bit concerning to have this headline because people will look at their pets and their cats and their dogs and think, well, I'm not going to send them to be tucked into by a tiger.
I used to have big arguments with my sister about whose job. We shared the hamster, about whose turn it was to clean it out, because obviously no one wanted to do that. But I think if my parents said to me, you better clean it out, otherwise we're going to donate it to the zoo, that would have been the best incentive ever to do a more thorough job. What could be gifted to the zoo in Denmark is this absolutely revolting Yorkshire mega rat. And there's been rumours of big rats ever since the Birmingham bin strike started, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the programme. 22 inches from nose to tail is this rat that was caught in Yorkshire, and there is a photograph of it inside the paper today.
It is quite horrendous when you look at people are petrified of rats, and they always say that you're within 10 feet of a rat in London, rather similar to being 10 feet of a lawyer, and probably for the same reasons. But it is, if you look at the size of this thing, it's absolutely horrendous. And I think anybody looking at that would quite willingly send that off to the Danish zoo.
Yes, well, I think they will actually refuse it because that has to be healthy, whatever goes to the Danish zoo, and I think alive at the time. But you think, well, maybe they could start feeding them huge mega rats. The final thing we should talk about, Andrew, and with some degree of sadness and sensitivity, because I know he was a friend of yours, the Times pays tribute to the shock jock, the very controversial broadcaster James Whale, who died yesterday. I know you worked with him. Mike Graham, and he works at Talk TV and Talk, so he's a resident of this building, so lots of people here came across him a lot. But what did you what do you have to say about your friendship and his career?
Well, it was a lifetime of nighttime. He revolutionised radio over here. He was the very first shock jock. They used to have a number in the States. But no, he's been a friend for many, many years, and I had the joy of being a regular on his show. And when his illness, which he's battled for a very long time, he used to do the first hour of the show, and I used to do the remaining 2 hours with Ash on that sort of basis. A real honour to be part of that. But he was bold, boundary-pushing broadcasting is what he got. He would always tell these sort of wonderful stories. One of the ones I love, he actually got the world record for kissing the most women, which he did in 8 hours, and he kissed 4,049 women within that period. What I also loved is how he became, because actually he was a bit of a pussycat. And he was actually he started off with this sort of nicely radio. And one particular time, and there was a call that really, really upset him. And he ranted and raved at them and hung up. And he was called in by management and he thought he was going to get sacked. And they actually said, no, this is fantastic. He got the best ratings ever. So he then developed
He
this
started
wonderful
arguing
personality.
on the air, yes.
Exactly. So they're glorious on that sort of basis. No, sadly missed. Lady W, Nadine Lamont, who he married fairly recently. She's a wonderful lady who accompanied him on some of his broadcasts, including a podcast called Tales of the Whales, where he talked about his cancer journey and provided a lot of relief for others going through a similar journey. A phenomenal man, an amazing legacy, and I know many, many people are going to miss. The world is a lot quieter with the missing of James Whale.
He was appointed MBE for his services to broadcasting and charity in 2023. Andrew, thank you for sharing your memories. Andrew Eborn, the barrister, broadcaster and president of Octopus TV.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.